The Haunted Masquerade. On a chilling Halloween night, the opulent mansion, bathed in an eerie moonlight, stood as an imposing sentinel of forgotten wealth and dark history. It was a mansion rumored to host the most prestigious masquerade in the city, and Emily, a young woman with an insatiable fascination for the paranormal, had received an invitation. Emily had always been drawn to the mysterious and the unexplained. It was as though a veil separated her from the ordinary world, and she was forever chasing the enigmatic shadows beyond it. This masquerade, with its whispered legends of masked guests, who were more than they seemed, was the perfect opportunity for her to delve into the secrets of the supernatural. As Emily arrived at the grand entrance of the mansion, she was immediately immersed in an atmosphere of elegance and mystique. The haunting strains of a piano echoed through the cavernous hall, and the masked guests swirled around her in a dazzling array of costumes. The masks they wore were intricate, from porcelain faces to sinister animal visages, concealing their true identity. Emily's own mask was a delicate porcelain creation, its expression caught between sorrow and fascination. With every step she took, her curiosity deepened. Who were these masked guests, and what secrets did they hide behind their elaborate disguises? The mansion was a labyrinth of dark corridors and hidden chambers, with candlelight casting eerie shadows on the antique portraits that adorned the walls. It was easy to lose oneself in the enchanting and unsettling ambience. As Emily ventured deeper into the mansion, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The mysterious masked guests seemed to appear and vanish in the blink of an eye, like elusive specters. One moment, she would be conversing with a tall figure dressed as a raven, and the next, they would have vanished into thin air. Emily's heart raced as she tried to decipher the enigmatic riddles presented by these peculiar attendants. It was in a secluded chamber, adorned with a profusion of crimson roses, that Emily's journey took a sinister turn. The masked guests in this room were different, their masks bearing expressions of agony and torment. They beckoned Emily closer, and as she approached, she realized that their hands were ice-cold and skeletal. "Join us," they whispered in unison, their voices carrying a haunting melody. "The secrets of this mansion are bound to the masks we wear." Emily's fascination wavered, and she was torn between fear and curiosity. The masked guests began to dance a macabre waltz, their movements unnaturally graceful. Emily felt herself being drawn into their spectral dance, and her porcelain mask seemed to grow heavier, as though it was binding her to their world. In a moment of terror, she tore off her mask, revealing her own face. The masked guests recoiled, their eyes wide with astonishment. Emily, desperate to break free from their sinister grasp, fled the chamber and into the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion. As she raced through the darkness, the mansion itself seemed to come alive. Its walls groaned, and the portraits whispered forgotten secrets. The enigmatic masked guests pursued her with ghostly determination, their skeletal hands reaching out for her. Finally, Emily stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its door slightly ajar. She pushed her way inside and found herself in a room filled with ancient tomes and dusty artifacts. In the center of the room, a mirror stood, its surface shrouded in a thick layer of cobwebs. Desperate to escape, Emily glanced at her reflection in the mirror, only to see an unfamiliar face staring back at her. It was a face bearing the sorrow of 1,000 souls, a face that spoke of hidden horrors and timeless mystery. With a cry of terror, Emily turned away from the mirror, and as she did, the masked guests appeared in the room, their skeletal fingers brushing her skin. They whispered, "You have seen what lies beneath the masks. You are one of us now." The room began to spin, and Emily felt herself being drawn into the mirror, her reflection merging with the portrait souls that had been trapped within. The mansion and its enigmatic guests faded away, leaving only an empty chamber and the haunting sound of a piano. The legend of Emily's disappearance became one of the many mysteries surrounding the opulent mansion. The masks and their masked guests continued to dance in eternal torment, their secrets hidden behind the porcelain facade. The mansion, a sentinel of forgotten wealth and dark history, remained a chilling enigma on Halloween nights, where the living and the supernatural converged, concealed behind the elegant masks of the masquerade. The witches' brew. Halloween night had arrived, and the full moon cast an eerie glow upon a centuries-old forest, nestled deep in the heart of the countryside. The trees whispered secrets of bygone years, and ancient oaks loomed like sentinels guarding the mysteries hidden within. In the heart of this secluded forest, a group of young hikers set out on an adventure to immerse themselves in the eerie, spectral beauty of the night. Among them was Sarah, a young woman with raven hair and an aura of enigmatic wisdom. She was known among her friends as a witch, though they assumed it was merely a playful Halloween moniker. As the hikers ventured deeper into the forest, they stumbled upon a hidden path that led to a small clearing. At its center stood a dilapidated, moss-covered hut, its thatched roof sagging with the weight of centuries. The air grew heavy with the scent of wild herbs and damp earth, and Sarah's eyes glinted with recognition as they fell upon the forgotten dwelling. "Look at this place," one of the hikers exclaimed, their voice tinged with awe. "It's like something out of a fairy tale." With a sly smile, Sarah stepped forward, her fingers grazing the hut's weathered door. She pushed it open with an eerie creak, revealing the dimly lit interior, cluttered with ancient scrolls, herbs, and peculiar trinkets. "You guys think it's abandoned?" Another hiker wondered aloud. Sarah's voice held a hint of mystery as she replied, "Not abandoned, my friends. This is a witch's hut, and I believe we may not be alone." The hikers exchanged glances, their excitement mingled with unease, but they couldn't resist the allure of the mysterious hut, and they ventured inside, curious to unearth its secrets. In the corner of the hut, they found a bubbling cauldron, its contents simmering with a malevolent green glow. A set of incantations and ingredients lay scattered on a nearby table, written in a language they could not understand. It was a witch's brew, concocted with intentions unknown to them. Sarah, despite her cryptic nature, appeared just as mystified by the contents of the cauldron. Her fingers traced the cryptic symbols etched into the table. "I don't recognize this," she admitted. "It's not from any known witch's grimoire." As the hikers pondered the mysterious brew, a chilling wind began to whisper through the trees outside. The hut seemed to sigh with the breath of the forest itself, and the shadows cast by the flickering candlelight danced like spectral apparitions. The forest had grown restless, sensing the intrusion into the witch's sanctuary. Sarah, with an uncanny awareness of the supernatural forces at play, warned the group to leave. But curiosity often drowns out the voice of reason, and the hikers remained, enchanted by the mysterious brew. With an ominous twist of fate, one of the hikers, drawn by a foolish temptation, reached out and touched the cauldron. The green potion surged and bubbled, releasing an otherworldly scream that echoed through the forest. It was a cry that summoned something ancient and malevolent from the depths of the woods. From the depths of the forest emerged a figure, shrouded in darkness and draped in ivy. The being was neither of the living nor the dead, a manifestation of the forest's primal energy. The hikers watched in terror as the figure, with outstretched arms, approached the hut with slow, deliberate steps. Sarah, realizing the peril they were in, chanted a protective spell in an attempt to banish the intruder. But the supernatural entity was immune to her efforts, and it let out a haunting, unearthly shriek. The air grew thick with an unsettling energy, and the hikers' breaths misted before them as they struggled to escape the hut. The witch's brew had awakened a force that sought retribution for the intrusion into its sacred domain. The supernatural entity advanced, its fingers gnarled and twisted like the ancient trees themselves. The hikers, desperate to flee, rushed out of the hut and into the dark forest. The chase that followed was relentless, the malevolent force pursuing them through the ancient trees. Their path was shrouded in darkness, and the forest's secrets seemed to conspire against them. Sarah, with her deep connection to the forest, tried to guide the hikers, but even her powers couldn't fully protect them from the relentless entity. As they ran, the hikers felt the forest's shadows closing in around them. The wind whispered ancient curses, and the trees seemed to sway with malevolent intent. The very heart of the forest had come alive, determined to protect its witch's brew and to exact vengeance upon those who had dared to meddle with the unknown. Exhausted and terrified, the hikers stumbled upon a hidden glade, where the malevolent entity finally relented, receding back into the depths of the forest. It had made its point clear. The secrets of the ancient forest were not to be trifled with. Sarah, her eyes heavy with remorse, explained the truth to her friends. She had known the forest's secrets and the power of the witch's brew, but she had not anticipated the force it would unleash. The consequences of meddling with the unknown had become painfully evident. The hikers left the forest at night, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of the supernatural forces that dwelled within. They had witnessed the clash between modernity and ancient power, and they understood the consequences of crossing that mystical threshold. The centuries-old forest, once again cloaked in shadow, had reclaimed its secrets, leaving the hikers with a haunting memory of a Halloween night they would never forget. The haunting melody. Halloween night had draped the small, sleepy town in an otherworldly cloak of mist and moonlight. While most of the townsfolk reveled in costume parties and trick-or-treating, Robert, a retired musician with a yearning for the past, found himself drawn to a place shunned by others, the abandoned theater that had long been rumored to be haunted. The old theater had once been the heart of the town's cultural life, hosting countless performances that resonated with the soul. But over the years, it had fallen into disrepair, its grandeur fading into the past like a melancholic tune. Its grand entrance was a portal to a bygone era, adorned with tarnished gold leaf and tattered velvet curtain. As Robert approached the decrepit theater, he could hear faint strains of haunting music that seemed to seep through the cracked windows. The eerie notes danced through the air, luring him closer as though they held the key to a long-forgotten memory. His footsteps echoed in the silent lobby as he ventured inside, where a spectral mist clung to the air. The theater itself was shrouded in shadows, and the velvet seats were draped in dusty cobwebs. Broken chandeliers dangled from the ceiling like fragile memories. Amid the eerie silence, Robert's heart swelled with a sense of longing. He had been a celebrated pianist in his youth, performing to audiences who had been transported to other realms by the power of his music. But age and illness had silenced his once mighty hands, leaving him with nothing but the echoes of his past performances. Curiosity, tinged with melancholy, urged him to ascend the creaking stairs to the balcony. There, he was met with a sight that left him breathless. On the stage below, a ghostly orchestra was performing, its members ethereal and translucent. The conductor, a spectral figure with a wistful expression, moved his baton with an elegance that belied the supernatural nature of the performance. The ghostly musicians, dressed in tattered and decaying formal attire, played their instruments with a grace that transcended the boundaries of the living world. The mournful strains of the violin, the bittersweet chords of the cello, and the haunting melody of the piano resonated through the theater, wrapping around Robert's very soul. Tears welled in Robert's eyes as he watched the spectral orchestra, for he recognized the piece they played, a composition he had written in his youth. It was a composition that had been his most haunting, a reflection of the depths of his emotions. He had never shared it with the world, and now here it was, being performed by apparitions. The conductor, with a knowing glance, beckoned Robert to join the performance. The retired musician hesitated for only a moment before he ascended the stage and took his place at the grand piano. As he played, a strange sensation washed over him. It was as if the years melted away, and his fingers danced across the keys with an agility he had thought long lost. The music swelled, and the ghostly orchestra responded with an intensity that transcended the mortal realm. In that ethereal moment, Robert was transported to a world of memories and emotions. He had never felt more alive, even as he played alongside phantoms of the past. The music reached a crescendo, and the theater's walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. But as the final notes of the composition faded, a deep and chilling silence descended upon the theater. The ghostly orchestra, with expressions of gratitude, began to disperse, their figures fading into the shadows. The conductor, with a somber nod, indicated that it was time for Robert to leave the stage. As Robert descended, he could hear the whisper of the spectral orchestra, a collective sigh that spoke of release and rest. They had been waiting for someone to unlock their music, and now their haunting melody had been heard. With a heavy heart, Robert exited the abandoned theater, the echoes of the music still resonating within him. As he stepped into the moonlit night, he knew that he had experienced something extraordinary, something beyond the confines of the living world. But the encounter left him with a haunting question. What had driven the spectral orchestra to reach out to him, to share his own composition with him? What unseen forces bound the past to the present? And what secrets were concealed in the abandoned theater's shadows? Halloween night continued to enshroud the small, sleepy town, but for Robert, it was forever marked by the eerie revelation of a melancholic and supernatural melody, a testament to the resonance of forgotten art and the power of music to bridge the gap between the living and the spectral. The specters of the past had been awakened, and their haunting symphony would linger in Robert's memory, a reminder of the enduring mysteries of the world. The Cursed Carnival. On a moonless Halloween night, the derelict carnival grounds sat in eerie silence, a ghostly relic of a bygone era. The once colorful rides now lay decrepit and covered in rust, the laughter of children replaced by haunting whispers carried on the chill wind. Ethan, a thrill-seeker with a fascination for the macabre, had heard rumors of the haunted carnival that had long been abandoned. The tales of vengeful spirits who lingered on the cursed grounds had always intrigued him, and he couldn't resist the allure of exploring the spectral remnants of a once thriving amusement park. As he stepped through the creaking gate, a sense of foreboding washed over him. The carnival grounds were bathed in an unnatural, dim light, and the distant calliope music carried on the wind was filled with a discordant, haunting melody. The eerie call of a crow resonated through the desolation as Ethan ventured deeper into the carnival. He could feel the presence of the spirits that were said to inhabit the grounds, lingering like restless echoes of a distant past. His footsteps echoed on the decaying wooden planks, creating a cacophony that seemed to draw the attention of unseen eyes. Ethan's attention was soon captured by a dilapidated ticket booth, its glass windows cracked and broken. Inside, a faded poster depicted a sinister ringmaster. His eyes filled with malevolence, and beneath it, the haunting words, "The Cursed Carnival." His curiosity piqued. Ethan moved further into the carnival. He passed by the skeletal remains of carnival games, the prize stalls now housing nothing but cobwebs and decay. As he ventured deeper, the air grew colder, and he could hear the faint strains of eerie music growing louder. It was then that he encountered a tent, tattered and frayed, yet emanating an otherworldly aura. The entrance was framed by warm, red velvet curtains that seemed to beckon him closer. Ethan felt an irresistible pull, and, with a sense of trepidation, he pushed aside the curtains and entered the tent. Inside, the atmosphere was stifling, and the smell of damp earth hung in the air. Dim candlelight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the tent's walls. A spectral audience, their features gaunt and hollow, sat in rows of empty seats. At the center of the tent, a ghostly ringmaster stood, his sinister grin beckoning Ethan to join the macabre performance. Ethan, enticed by the otherworldly spectacle, took a seat in the front row, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. The eerie calliope music reached a haunting crescendo, and the spectral performers began their nightmarish act. Acrobats with hollow eyes defied gravity, twirling in midair with an uncanny grace. Fire eaters devoured ethereal flames that cast an eerie, pale light. A contortionist, her limbs twisting in grotesque angles, seemed to defy the very laws of physics. The act was an unsettling fusion of the uncanny and the sinister, a performance that transcended the realm of the living. As the performance reached its nightmarish climax, the ringmaster turned his attention to Ethan, beckoning him to join the surreal act. The audience, with hollow eyes and malevolent grins, urged him to become a part of the Cursed Carnival. Ethan, torn between fear and fascination, stepped into the center of the tent. The ringmaster handed him a pale, lifeless mask and whispered, "Join us and become one of the lost souls, and partake in the endless performance." With trembling hands, Ethan donned the mask, his identity concealed as he became a phantom of the macabre. The spectral audience applauded with glee, and the performers encircled him, their movements taking on a surreal and nightmarish quality. Ethan danced with spectral acrobats, breathed ethereal fire, and contorted his body in ways he never thought possible. The performance was an uncanny and unsettling display of the supernatural, a dance that transcended the boundaries of the living. As the nightmarish act reached its climax, the spectral audience erupted in a chilling, otherworldly cheer. The ringmaster, his eyes gleaming with malevolence, applauded Ethan with a sinister grin. But it was at that moment that Ethan's fear overcame his fascination. The mask that had concealed his identity seemed to tighten around his face, its pale, lifeless eyes staring into his soul. He felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the Cursed Carnival had ensnared him in its eternal performance. Desperate to break free from the sinister spectacle, Ethan tore the mask from his face. The spectral audience recoiled, their hollow eyes wide with astonishment. The ringmaster, with a malevolent scowl, extended his hand as if to claim Ethan's soul. With a cry of terror, Ethan fled the Cursed Carnival, the eerie calendar, the haunting on Elm Street. On Halloween night, a tranquil suburban neighborhood, particularly Elm Street, was bathed in the silvery glow of the full moon. Children dressed in costumes roamed the streets, their laughter echoing through the crisp autumn air. The Johnson family, newcomers to this idyllic community, had no reason to suspect the eerie turn their Halloween night would take. The Johnsons had moved into a charming house on Elm Street, their new home situated beneath the ancient branches of gnarled trees that lined the quiet avenue. It was a beautiful, old house with a history that whispered in the creaking floorboards and the time-worn wallpaper. Yet, as they settled into their new life, strange occurrences began to plague their Halloween night. As the family gathered in the living room, preparing to give out candy to the trick-or-treaters, a sudden chill filled the air. The temperature plummeted, and their breaths materialized in front of them like ethereal specters. The candles on the mantelpiece flickered and sputtered, casting eerie, dancing shadows across the walls. Startled, Sarah Johnson, the eldest daughter, clutched her candy bowl as a feeling of unease settled upon her. She couldn't shake the sensation that they were being watched, and the air was heavy with a malevolent presence. Just as they tried to dismiss the strange occurrences as mere coincidences, a chilling whisper drifted through the room. It was a hushed, ethereal voice, barely discernible, but it sent shivers down their spines. The voice seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, as if the very house was speaking to them. The Johnsons exchanged nervous glances, their unease growing by the minute. Still, they attempted to rationalize the eerie happenings as Halloween pranks or tricks of the imagination. However, the malevolent presence that lingered in their new home refused to be ignored. In the dead of night, the family was awoken by the sound of footsteps echoing in the empty hallways. The house itself seemed to come alive with a sinister energy, its time-worn floorboards groaning in agony as if tormented by unseen forces. As they ventured through the house to investigate the source of the disturbances, their eyes were drawn to an old, ornate mirror that hung in the hallway. In the dim moonlight, their reflections seemed distorted, as if trapped in an otherworldly dimension. The malevolent presence intensified as Sarah's younger brother, Michael, began to have vivid and terrifying nightmares. He would wake up in the dead of night, his screams piercing the silence, his terror palpable. He spoke of shadowy figures lurking in the corners of his room, whispering malevolent secrets in the darkest hours. The Johnsons couldn't ignore the mounting evidence any longer. They knew that the house held dark secrets, secrets that had been locked away for years, and they were now unraveling, seeping into the very fabric of their lives. Sarah, determined to uncover the truth, delved into the house's history. She unearthed tales of previous occupants who had experienced similar hauntings, of unexplainable phenomena that had driven them to the brink of madness. The house on Elm Street had a dark legacy, one that had been buried beneath layers of suburban life. Sarah's research led her to a revelation. The malevolent presence was tied to a tragic event that had occurred within the house's walls decades ago. A family, much like the Johnsons, had once lived there, but their lives had been marked by darkness and despair. The spirit of a tormented soul, bound to the house, sought to make its presence known, to exact its revenge on the living. Determined to break the cycle of torment, Sarah delved into a series of rituals and incantations meant to appease the restless spirit. It was on Halloween night, with the moon high in the sky, that she attempted to commune with the malevolent entity. As Sarah began the ritual, the house trembled, and the air grew thick with anticipation. The malevolent spirit, once hidden in the shadows, emerged, a swirling, ethereal figure with hollow, mournful eyes. In that fleeting moment of connection, Sarah understood the depths of the spirit's pain and anger. It had been wronged, its life ended in tragedy, and it had clung to the house seeking solace, seeking release from the torment of its existence. Sarah spoke words of understanding, words of forgiveness, and the spirit wavered. It hesitated, as if torn between vengeance and the chance of finding peace at last. In a final, haunting wail, the spirit dissipated, leaving the house on Elm Street bathed in a solemn stillness. The malevolent presence was no more, its anger and pain finally put to rest. As Halloween night drew to a close, the Johnson family felt a sense of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. The house on Elm Street was no longer haunted by the malevolent spirits of the past, and they could finally settle into their new life in peace. The Johnsons had experienced a Halloween night like no other, one filled with spine-tingling encounters and unexplainable phenomena. It was a haunting experience that would forever linger in their memory, a reminder of the secrets that could be concealed in the most familiar of spaces and the enduring power of the unknown. The Lost Souls of the Forest. On a moonlit Halloween night, Mark, a nature enthusiast with a penchant for adventure, found himself drawn to the heart of a dense, ancient forest. The full moon cast an eerie glow through the towering trees, creating an otherworldly landscape that beckoned him into the wilderness. The forest had always held an enigmatic allure for Mark. Its gnarled trees, their branches intertwined like skeletal fingers, whispered ancient secrets. It was a place that held both beauty and dread, a place where nature's power was evident, and the spirits of the past were said to linger. Mark's fascination with the forest had grown over the years, and on this fateful Halloween night, he decided to venture further into the woods than he ever had before, armed with a flashlight and a sense of curiosity. He pushed deeper into the undergrowth, following the winding, moss-covered path. As he ventured further, the atmosphere in the forest changed. The air grew cold, and the once gentle rustling of leaves was replaced by a silence so profound it sent shivers down his spine. Mark felt as though he had entered a realm untouched by time, a place where ancient forces slumbered. It was then that he stumbled upon it, hidden amidst the underbrush, an old, rotting tree, its gnarled roots clutching the earth like skeletal fingers. The tree seemed to call out to him, its presence magnetic and eerie. Mark, unable to resist the allure of the forbidden, reached out to touch the tree's ancient bark. As his fingers made contact with the tree, an unnatural chill coursed through his body, and the forest seemed to come alive with a sinister energy. Shadows danced beneath the twisted branches, and the moonlight took on a ghostly power. The forest whispered secrets, and Mark, his curiosity piqued, followed the sounds. It led him deeper into the woods, to a place where the trees seemed to part, revealing a clearing bathed in an eerie, ethereal light. In the center of the clearing, a spectral figure materialized, its form insubstantial and ghostly. It was a tormented spirit, its eyes filled with anguish, and its presence exuding a sense of malevolence. Mark, filled with a mixture of fascination and fear, watched as the spirit gestured to the forest around him. The forest came alive with more apparitions, the tormented souls of the past. They moved with an eerie grace, their ethereal forms swaying like leaves in the wind. Their faces held expressions of sadness and torment, and their presence was unmistakably vengeful. As the spirits danced in the moonlit clearing, Mark realized that he had stumbled upon something he could not comprehend. He had unwittingly released the tormented souls of the forest, ancient entities who sought vengeance for the disrespect shown to their sacred realm. Desperate to escape the harrowing spectacle, Mark retraced his steps, but the forest seemed to have changed. The once familiar path had twisted and distorted, leading him deeper into the heart of the ancient woods. The spirits of the forest followed, their presence growing more menacing with each step. Mark's heart raced as he tried to find his way out, but the forest seemed to conspire against him. Trees leaned in closer, their branches forming an impenetrable barrier. The moon cast eerie shadows, and the spirits' whispers filled the air, echoing like a haunting symphony. As he delved deeper into the heart of the forest, the boundary between the living and the dead grew thin, and Mark's reality began to unravel. He felt the spirits grip tightly, their malevolence seeping into his very being. In a moment of desperation, Mark reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, ornate flute that he had brought with him. It was an heirloom passed down through generations, and he hoped that its music would somehow appease the vengeful spirits. With trembling hands, he began to play a haunting melody, the notes echoing through the forest. The spirits' movements faltered, and their expressions shifted from anger to sorrow. It seemed that the music had reached them, awakening a long-forgotten memory of the living world. As Mark continued to play, the forest itself seemed to respond. The trees swayed in time with the music, and the moonlight grew warmer and more comforting. The spirits, their expressions now filled with a mixture of longing and sadness, began to fade away, their forms dissolving into the moonlight. The forest returned to a tranquil, silent beauty, and Mark felt the weight of the ancient woods lift from his shoulders. His music had appeased the tormented souls, and they had found peace at last. With a sense of relief, Mark emerged from the forest, the first rays of dawn breaking through the trees. He had survived a night filled with unimaginable terror, a night when the boundary between the living and the dead had blurred. As he made his way back to civilization, Mark couldn't help but reflect on the power of nature and the ancient spirits that dwelled within it. The forest had taught him a profound lesson about respect for the natural world and the consequences of disregarding its sanctity. The lost souls of the forest had found peace, and Mark had emerged from the harrowing encounter with a newfound reverence for the wilderness. The ancient woods would forever hold their secrets, but they had also imparted a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his day. The Sinister Masquerade. On Halloween night, when the world was shrouded in darkness and the air was filled with whispers of the unknown, Olivia, a young history enthusiast, found herself drawn to an old, abandoned mansion. Its grandeur was a stark contrast to the overgrown vines that now enveloped it, and its foreboding presence seemed to beckon her into the past. The mansion was a relic of a bygone year, its walls echoing with tales of lavish masquerade balls and forgotten secrets. Olivia had always been captivated by history, and the allure of this decaying edifice called to her in a way nothing else could. The moon cast a ghostly pallor over the scene as she made her way through the broken gates and up the grand steps. Olivia pushed open the creaking doors, revealing a grand ballroom that had frozen in time. The chandeliers overhead hung low, their crystals dull and lifeless. Tattered remnants of velvet drapes swayed gently in the eerie silence, as if mourning the lost splendor of the past. As she ventured further into the grand ballroom, Olivia noticed an array of masks scattered about, intricately designed and of varying shapes and sizes. They lay in disarray on the cold, marble floor. She picked up one of the masks, its craftsmanship exquisite, and it seemed to whisper secrets to her. It was then that Olivia heard faint, haunting music. The notes were delicate and melancholic, playing a haunting melody that wrapped around her like a shroud. She followed the music, her steps light, as if guided by a force beyond her understanding. In the center of the ballroom, an ethereal scene unfolded. Spectral dancers, clad in elegant attire, twirled and whirled in graceful waltzes. Their movements were ghostly and mesmerizing, their laughter echoing through the abandoned hall. Olivia watched in awe as the past came to life before her eyes. Without realizing it, she had become a part of the otherworldly masquerade. A spectral hand reached out, and she was drawn into the dance, her heart pounding in her chest. The music seemed to flow through her, and the spirits moved in rhythm with her steps, their eyes filled with longing. As Olivia danced with the spectral figures, she felt an overwhelming sense of déjà vu. The masks concealed the dancers' faces, and the music filled her with a sense of longing and sorrow. It was as if she had been part of this ghostly ball in a previous life, and the memories of that time were resurfacing. With each twirl and dip, Olivia began to lose herself in the dance. Her connection to the living world faded. The grand ballroom became a timeless realm, where the past and present melded into one. The dancers, their eyes locked onto hers, seemed to beckon her deeper into the enigma of forgotten history. Suddenly, the music shifted, and the dancers' movements grew more frenzied. Olivia's heart raced as the once elegant waltz transformed into a ghastly spectacle. The spirits spun her faster and faster, their laughter turning to haunting cries. As she twirled among the spectral masqueraders, Olivia began to understand the true nature of the dance. The spirits were trapped in a never-ending waltz, their souls bound to the mansion, unable to find release. They longed for something they could never attain, and their pain was etched into their eyes. Desperation washed over Olivia as she realized the sinister truth of the masquerade. The spirits sought to bind her to their eternal dance, to trap her within the grand ballroom for all time. She had unwittingly become a part of their cruel and relentless performance. In a moment of sheer terror, Olivia broke free from the grasp of the spectral dancers and stumbled to the cold, unforgiving floor. The music grew louder and more discordant, the spirits' cries turning into wails of anguish. The masks the dancers wore seemed to twist and contort, their elegant features transforming into grotesque, glaring visages. Gasping for breath, Olivia crawled to the abandoned doors, her heart pounding. With a surge of adrenaline, she pushed them open and tumbled out into the moonlit night, the haunting music and the anguished cries of the spirits echoing in her ears. She lay on the cold ground, her body trembling, as the grand mansion loomed in the distance, its windows dark and foreboding. The allure of the supernatural in the past had nearly consumed her, and she had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. As the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, Olivia knew she had witnessed something beyond explanation. The Sinister Masquerade was a reminder of the enigma of forgotten history, a cautionary tale of the allure of the supernatural and the treacherous dance of the past. From that day on, Olivia's fascination with history took on a new dimension. She understood that the past held mysteries that should remain undisturbed, and that some secrets were better left buried. The grand mansion and its spectral masqueraders would forever haunt her dreams, a reminder of the night she danced with the enigma of forgotten history. The phantom ship's curse. On a desolate Halloween night, the fog rolled in from the churning sea, cloaking the beach in an eerie shroud. The moon's pale glow barely penetrated the thick mist, casting long, ghostly shadows that stretched across the sand. It was on this ominous night that David, a seasoned fisherman with salt water in his veins, would encounter a maritime terror unlike anything he had ever imagined. David had spent his life on the ocean, where the call of the waves and the cry of seagulls were as familiar as his own heartbeat. But that night, he had decided to venture to a different part of the coastline in search of a rumored shipwreck that had haunted the local legends for centuries. As he trudged along the shoreline, his flashlight cutting through the thick fog, the atmosphere grew heavier with each step. The sensation of being watched crept over him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the sea held ancient secrets that were not meant for human eyes. The spectral shipwreck, it was said, appeared only on Halloween night, and those who beheld it were cursed for life. David had dismissed the stories as mere superstition, but the allure of the mysterious legend drew him deeper into the treacherous terrain, and then he saw it. An apparition in the mist, a ghastly, ancient shipwreck, its time-worn timbers groaning beneath the weight of time and tide. The vessel, long abandoned by both man and sea, lay beached like a forsaken leviathan. David approached with a mixture of trepidation and awe, his footsteps heavy in the sand. He had heard tales of this ship, a cursed relic of the sea, but he never expected to stand in its haunting presence. The ship's name, the Abyssal Wraith, was barely visible on the decaying hull, its letters marred by centuries of salt and decay. As he stepped onto the ship's decaying deck, the night seemed to grow even darker, and the shadows that had been merely eerie before now became truly menacing. It was as if the vessel itself sucked the very light from the world. And then they appeared, the ghostly crew of the Abyssal Wraith, transparent figures clad in tattered sailor uniforms, their eyes empty voids. They moved with an eerie grace, their footsteps soundless on the rotting wood. They were the lost souls of sailors who had met their doom at sea, forever bound to their spectral ship. The crew did not speak, but their intentions were clear. David was not welcome on their ship, and he was about to become a part of their cursed existence. Panic gripped him as he tried to turn and flee, but it was too late. An invisible force pulled him back onto the ship, and he was surrounded by the ghostly crew. With hollow eyes fixed on him, the ghostly sailors moved in eerie unison, their spectral hands reaching out to claim him. The captain, a towering figure with a rotting tricorn hat, raised a skeletal hand, and David felt a cold, clammy grip close around his throat. As the ghostly captain's fingers tightened, David gasped for breath, his vision darkening at the edges. He was being dragged into the cursed maritime lore, into a world of lost sailors and a shipwreck that defied the boundaries of life and death. In a desperate bid for survival, David fumbled for his pocket knife and slashed at the spectral hand that held him. The captain let out a wail of anguish, and the grip on David's throat weakened just enough for him to break free. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled strength, He sprinted across the rotting deck, the ghostly crew in relentless pursuit. He had only one chance to escape their curse, to break free from the abyssal wraith's malevolent grip. Reaching the ship's bow, David made a daring leap into the frigid, turbulent sea. The shock of the cold water jolted him to his senses, and he fought to stay afloat as the phantom shipwreck vanished into the mist behind him. But the curse of the abyssal wraith was not so easily dispelled. As David swam for his life, he could feel the spectral hands of the crew clawing at his legs, trying to drag him back into the depths. The cold, unrelenting sea churned with supernatural fury, and David knew he was in a fight for his very soul. With every ounce of strength he could muster, he fought against the ghostly crew, kicking and thrashing his way toward the distant shoreline. The fog in the night seemed endless, and the weight of the curse threatened to pull him under. But as the first hints of dawn broke through the horizon, the ghostly hands loosened their grip, and the cursed maritime nightmare began to fade. The beach came into view, and David staggered onto the sand, gasping for breath. The cursed shipwreck had vanished into the depths, and the spectral crew were gone. David had survived the ordeal, but the memory of the haunted vessel would forever haunt his dreams. From that day on, David knew that the sea held mysteries beyond human understanding, and that some legends were best left untouched. The curse of the Whispering Mirror. On a chilling Halloween night, the ancient, dimly lit antique shop seemed like the last place anyone would want to be. But for Lily, an avid collector of all things old and mysterious, it was the perfect destination for her unusual obsession. The shop, hidden away in a quiet corner of town, had long been rumored to house items with a dark history. The dim glow of antique lamps cast eerie shadows on centuries-old furniture, taxidermy creatures, and peculiar relics from days long past. Lily, a young woman with a penchant for all things unusual, had ventured into this enigmatic establishment with a sense of anticipation. As she explored the dusty shelves, her fingers brushed against ancient books, tarnished jewelry, and peculiar curiosity. But it was a mirror that caught her attention, one unlike any she had seen before. The mirror was ornate, with a heavy wooden frame that seemed to whisper secrets of centuries gone by. Its glass, slightly warped with age, held a hint of darkness, as if it had absorbed the mysteries of all those who had gazed into it over the years. As she examined the mirror, the shop owner, an elderly man with a gaunt face and piercing eyes, approached her. His voice was like a spectral whisper as he explained the mirror's history. "Careful with that one, young lady," he said. "It's not just any mirror. It's said to be cursed, inhabited by the tormented souls of those who once gazed into it." Lily's fascination with the paranormal was piqued, and despite the ominous warning, she couldn't resist the allure of the mirror. With a sense of daring, she decided to purchase it and take it home. As she carried the cursed mirror to her car, she couldn't shake the feeling that the antique shop owner had known something he hadn't shared. With every passing mile on the dark, winding roads leading to her home, her unease grew. Once the mirror was in her possession, she couldn't resist the urge to hang it in her bedroom. Its eerie presence cast an otherworldly spell over the room, and Lily found herself drawn to it like a moth to a flame. As the night wore on, Lily couldn't sleep. The dim glow of the antique street lamps outside her window seemed to dance across the mirror's surface. In its reflection, she saw her own face, but it was not alone. Faint images of other faces, long distorted by time and torment, appeared and disappeared like wraiths in the glass. A chill ran down her spine, and she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The whispers began, the soft, haunting murmurs of long-forgotten souls trapped within the mirror's depths. They spoke of pain, regret, and anguish, their voices like distant cries in the night. Lily couldn't tear her gaze away from the mirror. The spectral figures within seemed to reach out to her, their transparent hands clawing at the glass as if begging for guidance. The room grew colder, and the air filled with an otherworldly presence. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling around her. She realized with mounting horror that the mirror was a gateway to a realm of suffering and torment. Desperate to break free from the mirror's spell, Lily tried to turn away, to close her eyes and shut out the malevolent whispers. But it was too late. The spectral figures, now more distinct and horrifying, began to emerge from the mirror, with hollow eyes and agonized expressions. They moved toward her, their insubstantial hands reaching out to touch her, to drag her into their world of eternal suffering. Lily's heart raced as she backed away, her breath quickening. In her fear and desperation, she grabbed a nearby crucifix and held it up to the mirror. The spectral figures recoiled, hissing and wailing in torment. The crucifix, a symbol of purity and protection, seemed to hold the spirits at bay. Summoning all her courage, Lily began reciting prayers she had learned as a child. The power of her faith seemed to weaken the mirror's hold, and the spectral figures retreated, fading into the glass as if retreating from an invisible force. The room slowly returned to its normal state, and the mirror's surface became still, devoid of the haunting apparitions. Lily felt a profound sense of relief, but she also knew that the cursed mirror was not to be trifled with. With trembling hands, she carefully covered the mirror, shrouding it in a heavy cloth. She knew it had to be removed from her home, far from the world of the living. The following day, Lily returned to the antique shop, determined to rid herself of the malevolent mirror. The shop owner, with a knowing look in his eyes, accepted the return without question. As she left the shop, the mirror was once again in the hands of the enigmatic storekeeper, where it would remain, a relic of dark history and a reminder of the price one paid for meddling with the supernatural. Lily walked away, her heart heavy with the knowledge of the mirror's sinister secret. She had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back, whispering the horrors of the past into her very soul. The haunted pages. On a chilling Halloween night, the moon hung like a pale lantern in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the ancient, sprawling graveyard. Hidden within the heart of the cemetery, where the shadows held sway, there lay a dimly lit library, its existence known to few. It was in this eerie enclave of knowledge that Daniel, a young scholar with a curiosity as boundless as the cosmos, found himself. He had heard whispers of this hidden library, a repository of forgotten tomes, shrouded in mystery and guarded by the restless spirits of the graveyard. Dressed in a weathered trench coat, his satchel filled with ancient scrolls and dusty manuscripts, Daniel ventured into the library, the creaking door closing behind him. The scent of old books and aged wood filled the air as he explored the dimly lit shelves. It was among these forgotten texts that he stumbled upon a tome unlike any other. The book was bound in cracked, weathered leather, its pages yellowed with age. It sat alone on a small, dusty pedestal, as if awaiting his discovery. The title, embossed in faded gold letters, read, The Liber Maleficarum, the Book of Witches. The very sight of the cursed book sent shivers down Daniel's spine. But his insatiable curiosity drove him to examine it further. He carefully opened the ancient pages, revealing the dark incantations and arcane symbols within. The text seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, its pages turning on their own as if guided by unseen hands. Unbeknownst to Daniel, the book held more than mere words. It contained the malevolent souls of witches, bound to its pages for eternity. As he began to read the sinister incantations, he unwittingly unleashed their vengeful spirits. A chilling wind swept through the library, extinguishing the feeble candlelight, and in the darkness, a chorus of anguished wails filled the air. The spirits of the witches, their spectral forms materializing around Daniel, reached out to him with bony, ethereal fingers. Terrified, Daniel tried to close the book, but it resisted his efforts, its pages flipping frantically as if driven by the malicious intent of the trapped souls. The room was now alive with the tormented spirits, their wailing growing louder as they surrounded him. Desperate to escape, Daniel backed into a corner, the cursed book clutched tightly in his trembling hands. The witches, their faces twisted with hatred, advanced on him, their ghostly forms almost palpable in their malevolence. In a moment of desperation, Daniel began to recite verses from a forgotten prayer he had learned in his studies of the occult. The words flowed from his lips like a lifeline, a barrier against the spectral onslaught. The witches hissed and recoiled, their faces contorted with pain as they were repelled by the protective incantation. The cursed book, now a malevolent entity in itself, fought against him, but Daniel's resolve was unyielding. With a final chant, he forced the spirits back into the book and slammed it shut. The library fell into silence. The oppressive presence of the witches vanished. The candlelight flickered back to life, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Daniel, panting and exhausted, clutched the cursed tome to his chest, his heart heavy with the knowledge of the forbidden knowledge he had dared to seek. Realizing the danger of leaving the cursed book in the library, he tucked it into his satchel and made his way back to the graveyard's entrance. The moon, now high in the sky, seemed to watch him with a knowing gaze as he left the dimly lit library behind. As Daniel walked through the graveyard, the spirits of the deceased seemed to murmur their gratitude, their voices carried on the night's cool breeze. He had saved them from the malevolence of the Liber Maleficarum, a book that should never have been opened. With each step, he felt the weight of the cursed tome, the vengeful spirits, and the price of his own curiosity. The haunting knowledge he had uncovered would forever haunt his dreams, a reminder of the enigmatic, eerie, and unsettling night he had dared to unlock the haunted pages of the Book of Witches.